If you listen to me on Spotify, there is an option to leave your opinion of the show. And Shar did just that. On our episode last week that was on alert barking, Shar said, "Good tip, and I'll definitely try it. But it's my Aussie's attention barking that really frustrates me. Hoping you'll have a podcast on that. Thanks." Well, Shar, this podcast is for you. Today we are going to be talking about attention barking. 3 truths about attention barking and why saying quiet, no barking isn't helping. Let's get into it. Are you worried that your fearful dog may hurt someone or something else? Do you have to prepare just to take a walk around the block? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I too had that dog. The one that you could only walk at nighttime when no one else was around. And I felt ashamed, and oh gosh, I wish that people could just see the dog that I know and love. I wanted the confidence to be able to walk my dog and not have to worry about who or what was around the corner. And I kept telling myself that if I just keep doing obedience drills and distracting with treats, that things would get better. Until I found the secret. Fear is not something that you can train out of a dog. In this podcast, you will find tips to help build your dog's confidence naturally, communication and understanding to foster that trust, and how to address those fear-based behaviors effectively so that you can enjoy a stress-free life with your dog. So if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners, grab your notebook, and let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to Beyond Obedience. This is Tracy. And oh my gosh, I had so many comments about the barking episode. Barking is such a big thing. Thank you, Shar, for reaching out on Spotify with your question about attention barking. And that's what we're going to do today. 3 truths about attention barking and what you can do about it. Before I get into that, I want to make sure that you know the best way to stay connected with me is to be on my mailing list. Get on that mailing list. It's like being a pen pal with me. You'll get a weekly episode boost about what's happening on the podcast, plus question of the week. You could be featured on question of the week. We can just stay connected. Send me a picture of your dog. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. Let's stay connected. Be sure you're on the Canine Chronicles. How do you do that? beyondobedience.ca. You're going to hang on the page for just a second or two, and a pop-up menu is going to come up, and it's going to ask you, do you want to be on the Canine Chronicles? Put your name in there. Let's stay connected. It's the best way to stay connected. All right. I want to start off by sharing the story. I was reminded of this story when Shar was talking about attention barking, and I wanted to share this. This goes back a little ways. This was back when we were doing our dog boarding and daycare. And right when we first opened, if you didn't know, my husband and I, we transformed a horse facility into a dog facility, but we kept it looking like a horse facility. So the nice thing about it was we turned the horse stalls into dog suites. So they were 10 by 10 runs, really big, beautiful. People could bring their crates and dog beds and all sorts of stuff. It was lovely. But honestly, it was kind of catered to big dogs, right? And so when I got my first phone call about boarding 2 little Maltese, I said yes right away because we had an opening. But afterwards, I was thinking to myself, oh gosh, they're going to be so tiny in these great big huge stalls. And so I turned to my husband and I said, I know this is a little bit unorthodox, but would you mind terribly if we actually kept these 2 little Maltese in our house? Of course, my husband agreed because he is a small dog lover. He loves the little dogs. So he was like, of course. So that's what we did. She dropped off the dogs. We kept them in our house. They still got to do all the regular stuff. They went out with the dogs and they went for the dog walks, but they stayed with us during the day and at nighttime. And we loved them. Oh my gosh, they were so much fun. One of the things we loved about them, as a sidebar, they used to snuggle up like on our necks while we were watching TV. They were like little neck warmers. They were amazing. Anyway, We had them for about 2 weeks. The owner came back, and when she got out of the car, she kind of had this like half smile, half sort of like, smirk. And she was like, "So, oh, how were they?" And I was like, "Oh, they were great." And she's like, "No, seriously, you can just tell me the truth." And I'm like, "I'm not sure what you're getting at. They were actually fantastic, really easy." And she's like, "Okay, come on. I know I didn't tell you about this at first because I honestly thought you wouldn't take them if I told you. But like, they're barking, like they nonstop barking." And I was like, "They were fine." And she's like, "No, seriously. Like, how do you?" And I was literally shocked at the conversation because she was like, "These dogs bark nonstop, and we have vaulted ceilings and it echoes and it's terrible. The dogs drive me crazy with their barking." And she's like, "You mean to tell me they didn't bark at you?" And I was like, "No. I mean, they might have for the first day or two, but after that, they settled in and they were fine." And she was just like, "I can't believe it." She actually went home with the dogs and then she sent me videos. She was like, "This is what they act like at home. Why didn't they act that way at your house?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's probably because I don't like barking and I just don't do that." So, um, and she was quite flustered with that whole scenario. But I wanted to share that story because when we're talking about the three truths about attention barking and what you can do about it, the first truth is this: dogs only do what works for them. So when we're talking about attention barking in particular, the behavior becomes problematic when it actually works for the dog, when they get the attention they are seeking from doing the behavior. And I know sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. And I never like doing that, to be honest with you. I always hate being like, "It's you." Like, I never like doing that. Be like, "It's all you." But the reality of it is that's how behavior works. The behavior is presented, they get what they want from that, so they keep repeating the behavior. So the very first thing that you need to do when we're talking about attention barking is you need to figure out and identify, how is this working for your dog? What is happening? What are you doing that is making this work for the dog? There's going to be things that you're doing, like telling them to stop barking. Believe it or not, that is actually working for the dog. And that leads me into step number 2, the second truth about it. In order for you to start to change this, you actually have to be quiet. You have to be what you want the dog to be. You'll hear me say this a lot. You'll hear me say this concept a lot. If you want to be someone who has the ability to influence your dog's behavior, you have to be what you want the dog to be, which means if we want the dog to be quiet, you yourself have to be quiet. By being what we want the dog to be, we're actually tapping into the adaptive nature of dogs that mimic us. And I will say, I want to say 9 times out of 10, because it's maybe never always, but the reality of it is like 99% of the time, if I go into somebody's home for a consult and one of their complaints is either chaos or barking, it is because the house itself, the people themselves, are also chaotic and loud. Okay. Now, maybe they've become that way because that's how they've been dealing with the barking. That's obviously certainly what may have happened. But that energy that we're putting into getting them to stop barking is actually energizing the barking. Okay, so we need to actually really focus in, double down on this idea of being quiet. In particular, and this is maybe a tip, this is a little bonus tip on this one. I quite often will see people telling their dogs, "No barking, stop barking, be quiet," all of those words. So you're fueling the energy of the barking. But even worse, I will see people, as soon as the dogs are quiet, start saying things like, "Good, quiet, good, quiet." Now, we believe that we're marking the behavior of what we want. But the bottom line is if your dog does not understand what those markers are or what they're for, they don't understand the words. So if they don't understand the words, but they're being quiet, but now you start talking to them and energizing the quiet period, now they're just going to be like, well, now you're just energizing them again. Okay. So I can't say this, this tip enough. You need to be quiet. Okay. Barking is energy, and everything that you do should be trying to take the energy out of the event rather than re-energizing the event. And then tip number 3 is actually a sort of an outside of the box kind of a tip. Maybe you've heard it before, but I'm going to bring it up again. You can actually start to train the dog to bark. Now, you've heard me sort of say concepts like this before, especially when it comes to things like fulfillment or things that you don't like the dog digging in the garden. I've often mentioned things like ask the dog to dig in the garden, right? Train the dog to do the thing that you don't like, because it is easier to tell a dog not now than it is to tell a dog not ever. The same sort of principle holds true for barking. We can certainly start to teach that bark command when the dog is barking, because they're offering up the behavior anyway. So it becomes a simple thing to start to do. Your dog's going to bark, you're going to throw him a treat. Now, if it were me, I wouldn't say anything. I'd just throw them a treat. And they would be like, I barked and you threw me a treat. And then they bark again and I throw them a treat. And then I keep throwing them the treat. But I'm not putting much energy in it. I'm just throwing a treat. Now I've got a dog that's barking and looking for treats, right? They might be a little confused. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Am I not just rewarding the dog for barking? Yes. Yes, you are. But it's a means to an end. So hang with me, okay? It's a means to an end, right? So they're barking, you're going to throw them a treat. They're barking, you're going to throw them a treat. You're barking, they're going to throw them a treat. You're going to keep doing that for a while until you're going to wait for a second, hold the treat, and then they bark. Then you're going to throw them a treat. And then you're going to wait for a second, and they're going to be looking at you almost excited. Then they're going to bark, and then you're going to throw them a treat. And then when you've got that, you're going to actually add the command. So now we're going to name it. We're going to call it speak, or whatever you want to call it. Most people would go with speak. So you're going to say speak, and then they bark. You go, yes. And then you throw them a treat. Speak, bark, yes. Throw them a treat. Now we've got a dog that's doing it on cue. So we can now start to manipulate that. Now, if we don't say speak and they speak, I can start to say things like, not getting the treat. And then they're quiet for a bit. Then I go, good. I don't say anything, but I'm like, And then I go, speak. Then they speak, and I go, yes. And I throw them a treat. Why is this fun? It may not be fun. Why is this important? Because when we teach the dog to speak, now we can start to say not now, right? When it's on a command, when we've taught them the cue, it's on a command. Now we can start to say, not now. That doesn't happen now. Okay, we can now say no to the things that they're doing, or or little nopes. Nope. Dog barks at me. I'm going to be like, nope. And they're going to go, oh, shoot, what am I supposed to do? Right, I don't bark. And then I wait for the command. And now I bark, right? So you can start to utilize this to actually teach the thing that you don't like by putting it on a command, okay? Now, here is I'm going to give you a bonus. I said there's 3 truths about attention barking. I'm going to give you a bonus tip about this. Okay, and the bonus is this. When you create a relationship with your dog where you are working hard to be the most influential person in the dog's life, you are working on that foundation of relationship, the leadership, the relevance, the fulfillment. You're out there engaging with the dog, respecting their genetic resume and being a part of everything that's them. And you're doing all of that great stuff. It becomes really easy to influence their behavior, to tell them no, to disagree with what they are doing in as simple as, in a lot of cases for me, an eye look or just a name. And the reason why I'll say this is because my good friend Shar pointed out that she's talking about Australian Shepherds, and I too have Aussies. And I will say that my Aussie, my one female Aussie, does bark a little bit. But it's not attention barking. She doesn't do it to get my attention because, one, my dogs know that doesn't work. You're not going to get my attention by barking. That's just not going to work, right? You'll get my attention by alert barking, 100%. I will go and check the thing that you're looking at because that's pro-social and I want to be a part of that. But you will not get my attention by barking at me. That is not a thing that happens in this household. And they know that. So Rue doesn't do that. But what she does do is she gets a little bit amped up when it's like when they're out playing and maybe there's a Frisbee involved and my other Aussie is going after it and she's trying to get his attention or she's just excited. It's an excitement bark. Okay. And if I'm being honest, I don't really like barking at all. I don't really like barking at all. So when she gets a little bit too barky, all I have to do is look at her and go, Rue. And that's it. And she'll usually come over and be like, oh, sorry. Right? Very rarely do I have to raise my voice. Sometimes I've been known to raise my voice. I try not to raise my voice because then I'm adding energy, right? And I don't want to do that. But I would say 9 times out of 10, when she starts getting barky, all I have to do is go, Rue. Right? Ugh, no. And that's it. It's a slight disagreement. So this bonus tip is actually more of a reminder that everything that you do throughout the day is an opportunity for you to either enhance that relationship, enhance that influence over your dog's behavior, or diminish that influence over your dog's behavior. So everything that I do with my dog, whatever I'm doing with my dog, is working on my attention barking. Every single thing that I do with my dog is working on recall. Every time I'm working on my relationship, I'm working on loose leash walking. Whenever I work on my relationship, when I am intentional and focused and trying to be somebody worth following to my dog, I am effectively going to influence their behavior in so many avenues so that becomes easier. Your life with your dog does not have to be a series of tricks and training and treat pouches and all of that. Now, it can be. Don't get me wrong. This is where I always want to add this in. If you love that stuff, have at it. I'm not telling you to not be that person. I'm saying if you're somebody that feels like you have to have a pocket full of treats and you have to be doing constant drills, I'm here to tell you just the way that you live with your dog is going to influence everything else, including attention barking. So let's recap. Let's go back to the list here. Let's recap what we talked about. Number 1, dogs only do what works. So the very first step is to identify, how is this working for the dog? Stop doing what's working for the dog. Number 2 was be quiet. Tapping into that adaptive nature of dogs' ability to mimic us. The more quiet you can be, the more quiet they will become over time. Okay, this isn't going to happen overnight. So please don't send me a message of being like, I tried being quiet, it didn't work. Over time. Remember, barking is energy. And when you are putting more energy into it, you're fueling that barking. Stop fueling it and let's be quiet. And then finally, tip number 3, train the dog to speak. Teach the dog the speak command so that now we can start to say, don't speak, right? We can actually start to, I'd say training is manipulate. We can start to manipulate that behavior to be what we want for us, which is quiet. And then as a side of that, always make sure that when we are talking about being quiet and we want to actually manipulate that, please remember that we want to make sure we're somebody that listens to the dog's barking. So alert barking, I will go check. Someone's at the door, I'm going to go check. They're letting me know something. They're in pain. Something startled them. All of those barks I will listen to, but I will not listen to or tolerate you barking at me. That's not how to get my attention. This is how you get my attention. And once the dogs know that, they're going to start to change that behavior. So there you go. There you go. Some tips on attention barking. As always, remember that barking is a complex thing with lots of reasons why your dog barks. So this is not exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination. This is just a few tips, something to think about to get you on your way to finding that peace and quiet that you so badly deserve. All right, that's it for me this week. Thank you very much, Shar, for your comment on Spotify. And hey there, dog lover. I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with another dog-loving friend who wants to have a happy, confident dog? And also, leave me a quick review on Apple Podcasts. It lights me up to know that this podcast is helping you. As always, I want you to get out there today and be the person that your dog thinks you are, because your dog thinks that you are amazing. And so do I. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week.